Well, hello and a very warm welcome to the Keys of the Kingdom Holy Bible YouTube channel, and as you already know, the channel that tells you everything about the Bible that they do not want you to know, all revealed here. My name is Christopher Sparks and I'm the translator of the Keys of the Kingdom Holy Bible, which is currently available in hardback and an ebook, and further works are in process. Now, in part 1 of this series on hellfire, I said that in the Old Testament there is one word they translate 3 ways, and in the New Testament there are 3 words they translate 1 way. And the one word in the Old Testament is Sheol, which they translate as grave, hell and pit. And there's no rhyme or reason to that other than the translator's agenda. And we see this in Isaiah 14 concerning the king of Babylon, the 7 verses between verse 9 and 15, where 3 times the king of Babylon is railed against, that he will be brought down to the grave. But the King James Bible translators put hell and grave and then hell for the 3 occurrences. But it's grave each time. So why were they so indiscriminate for exactly the same context? So they had no translating principle of context, but maybe they had an agenda. Or maybe they were incompetent and couldn't decide what it meant. Because in Psalm 37, 6 times there is the word eretz, which means earth or land. And they couldn't decide, so they did half each. For exactly the same words. You will inherit the land, you will inherit the earth, you inherit the land. And Jesus quoted this, Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the submissive, for they will inherit no, not earth, land. A reminder of the promise to the patriarchs. Only Jesus is the inheritor of everything in heaven and earth. So we see that inconsistency in Isaiah 14 in the King James, and then we saw also in part 1 that in Psalm 49 verse 15 and Psalm 86 verse 13 we have exactly the same contexts of King David speaking about being redeemed or delivered from the power of the grave. But the King James translators the first time put grave, and the second time they put the lowest hell. So the same context. Do you see? There's no principle of context. They did not have this translating law. And so we're reminded that phrase in 86:13 of the Psalms, where they've got lowest hell. We're reminded of the medieval Italian poet Dante and his epic poem, the Inferno. And incidentally, that's in the Latin Vulgate translation of the 4th century for grave. So you start to see the deep roots of these teachings. And so if they've put the lowest hell, well, is there a middle hell? Is there a highest hell? Is there a third from bottom hell? Dante's Inferno, the 10 circles of hell. 1 for the tax collectors, 1 for the popes and bishops, and 1 for the Bible translators. And so we saw also in the King James Bible their lack of consistency with the Greek equivalent of Sheol, which is Hades. And this occurs 11 times in the New Testament. 10 times they put it as hell, but it means grave. And once they got it right as grave. In 1 Corinthians 15:55, O grave, where is thy victory? Grave, yes, correct. But when Jesus in Matthew 16 was talking about building his ecclesia, his group of called out people, his vast gathering of the tribes, he said the gates of the grave will not prevail against it. I will build my ecclesia, and the gates of the grave will not prevail against it. In other words, all those in the faith will be resurrected into this great gathering of the ecclesia. But the King James Bible says the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So, well, I thought that by their teaching of hell, it was torture for eternity. So are they going to come out of the grave, out of hell rather, and join this ecclesia? And it just doesn't make sense. Or do they mean that all those demons and satans with their pitchforks and red horns are going to go out trying to stop Jesus building his ecclesia, which of course is all mythology. So now there are two more Greek words to deal with from the New Testament, and the one I want to speak about today is Gehenna. Now, what does Gehenna mean? Well, in the Old Testament we have the phrase Hinnom, which is in Joshua chapter 15 verse 8, where Joshua is dividing the regions of southern Jerusalem among the tribes of Judah. That starts at 15 verse 1, gets to 15 verse 8, and it describes an area by Jerusalem westward, and it says the valley of Hinnom, so the mountains before the valley of Hinnom to the west. So this is near Jerusalem, this valley of Hinnom. And then the King James Bible continues, which is at the end of the valley of the giants. Well, the word they've translated as giants, this is an aside by the way, is Rephaim, and these were people, a name of a Canaanite tribe, like the Jebusites and the Amorites, etc. So why have they put giants? And where this word Rephaim occurs in Isaiah, they put the dead. So they were frightened of putting this word Rephaim for some reason, frightened of naming these people. They didn't think it sounded right, but it's the name of a people. What's this about giants? Who says they were giants? So even if they were, Rephaim is the name of the tribe. Anyway, there in Joshua 15:8 we've got Gehinnom, the valley of Hinnom. Now, when we get to the New Testament, at this time there is the temple of King Herod the Edomite and his Edomite temple priesthood system. And nearby is the city's perpetually burning garbage dump. So not only was garbage, refuse thrown there, but the bodies of criminals. And the Greek word is Gehenna, which is Strong's Concordance reference G1067. So you see the likeness: Hebrew Gehinnom, Greek Gehenna. And now in Matthew chapter 5 verse 22, the King James does a remarkable thing, and it won't surprise you. Just turning to it here, it has Jesus saying that whoever shall say, "Thou fool," shall be in danger of hellfire. So those who are against me and love this hell teaching and these erratic translations say to me, no one spoke more about hell than Jesus. So I say to them, no one spoke more about hell than your translators. Because let's look at the context of what Jesus was saying, and you will see how wrong they are in their deductions. So Matthew 5:21 to 24. It'd be really great if you make a note of some of these, listen to this with pen and notebook and jot these down, and then you can make these teachings your own, and you can spread them and explain them to people, and you can be an ambassador for translation truth. In fact, the publisher and I have discussed, it was the publisher's idea of setting up something, ambassadors for the kingdom. But more news of that later. Right, Matthew 5:21, from the Keys of the Kingdom. You have heard that it was said to the ancients, you shall not commit murder. Not you shall not kill, because David killed Goliath. You shall not commit murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. Where does that come from? Exodus chapter 20 and Deuteronomy 5, the 10 Commandments. You shall not commit murder. It was said to the ancients, the people of old time. And then Jesus said, but I say to you, everybody who becomes angry with his brother without a cause will be liable to judgment. Well, yes, anger is not a fruit of the Spirit, but let's see how that continues. Whoever says to his brother, empty head, and whoever says, so it's joined to the last verse, and whoever says to his brother, empty head, because he's angry, will be in danger of the Sanhedrin. So it's the Sanhedrin's law now. We started with divine law, Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5, 10 Commandments. Now it's the law of the corrupt Sanhedrin, saying that you call your brother empty head and you'll be in danger of the Sanhedrin. Well, they'll come banging on your door like the KGB at 4 o'clock in the morning. But whoever says fool will be liable to the fire of the valley of Hinnom, Gehenna. So, if you call your brother empty head, you can be in danger of the Sanhedrin, but if you go so far as to call him fool, now these Greek words behind these obviously had greater potency, one against the other. Fool, the Greek, well, it would have been in the language of Jerusalem there, will be liable to the fire of the valley of Hinnom. So you could be condemned to death for calling somebody a fool. Your brother. You could be chucked on the city's perpetually burning rubbish dump because you have broken local law, the law of the Sanhedrin. It's not divine law. It is not divine law. So where the King James says, whoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire, it should be, first of all, noted that this is about local law, and it's nothing to do with God condemning anybody into hellfire. And second, it's not hell. That's a wrong translation. It's Valley of Hinnom, so that's wrong. And it's the fire of the Valley of Hinnom. That's the Greek order. And so they've put hellfire, they've put fire at the end, and that's wrong. And some people try and justify this word hell and say it means the grave. Well, it doesn't. It means the Valley of Hinnom. So that's wrong. And also, if they're saying that grave, hell means grave, well, they put hellfire. So please show me a grave with fire burning in it. So it's inconsistent, and there is behind it an agenda. Right, Matthew 23 verse 15 is another occurrence of Gehenna, the Valley of Hinnom. Gehenna, 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 the Valley of Hinnom. Can you find a Bible translation that has got Valley of Hinnom in it and not hell? I know one that transliterates it as Gehenna, but of what use is that? I said to the translator, why don't you put the Valley of Hinnom? And he said, well, if people want to look it up, they can find it out. Well, isn't that the translator's job? In Matthew 23, the whole passage is Jesus rebuking the scribes and the Pharisees, and he starts by saying, you sit in Moses' seat. But by that, this is a suggestion of irony, because they should not have been there, because they were employed by their Edomite king, King Herod. It's not disputed that he was an Edomite. It's not something I've made up. This is even mainstream stuff, and he destroyed the family records to conceal that he was an Edomite. So he employed Edomites in his temple system. How do I know this? First of all, they hated Jesus so much. That's the first sign. And Jesus says to them in Matthew 23 that they're guilty of all the blood going back to Abel. Therefore they are from a family line of the Canaanites, because Esau, who was also named Edom, which means red, married Canaanite women. So these people were descended from Canaanites, guilt of Cain. And Jesus says to them in verse 15 that they travel land and sea to make a proselyte or a convert, but when they make a convert, they make him twice as much a son of the valley of Hinnom as they themselves are. But the King James Bible has make them twice as much a child of hell. First of all, it's not child, it's son. The Greek word huios, like the Son of Man, Jesus, huios. It's masculine. It's not child, it's son. So a son of the valley of Hinnom. Now, this means fit to be chucked in this perpetually burning city's garbage dump. And so to call them a son of the valley of Hinnom is obviously a metaphor, because the the valley of Hinnom did not have sex with somebody and produce a son. So it's a metaphor, and it's a metaphor that's called kenning, Kenning, a typical device of Anglo-Saxon poetry, particularly the magnificent Christian poem Beowulf. And we also have in the Bible other devices of kenning. Two of the disciples are called sons of thunder. So this is what it means, that they made their converts twice as much a son of the valley of Hinnom as they were, even twice as fit for being chucked in the garbage dump as they themselves are. So Jesus is saying they themselves are fit to be chucked in the garbage dump as criminals. So they've destroyed the literary effect of kenning. They've changed son to child, and they've changed valley of Hinnom to hell. And so again, this is local law, the fire of the valley of Hinnom. It's nothing to do with divine law and eternally torturing somebody, because the divine law does not do that. Right, next occurrence I'm interested in is also in Matthew 23:33, or also in Matthew. Now turn to chapter verse 33, and now Jesus, like his elder cousin John the Baptist, called these Edomites serpents and progeny of vipers. That means descendants of the Canaanites. So, serpents, progeny of vipers, how can you escape from the judgment of the valley of Hinnom? What a wonderful insult to say to these proud, arrogant, murderous beasts that they were no better than the local criminals who deserved to be chucked in the city's garbage dump and their corpses burned. Isn't that better than saying, oh, go to hell? You know, you're fit for the garbage dump. Local understanding, appropriate, that they would have understood. But not in the minds of the King James translators, who did not understand that this was local law, and they have said, how can you escape from the damnation of hell? Well, damnation of hell. Again, excusers try and say that hell is the grave. Well, how is the grave damnation? Because all the apostles died. That wasn't through damnation. Damnation is a divine condemnation. But this is a judgment of the valley of Hinnom. So we see that this Gehenna from Gehinnom is the valley of Hinnom, and it's all to do with local law, and it's nothing to do with any divine judgment or torturing anybody for eternity in flames. Another device of kenning in the Bible is in the book of Job. So where they have flames, the Hebrew actually has sons of the spark. So Resheph, and Ben Resheph, sons of the spark, and that's flames. Or so it's the other way around, beg your pardon. Flame, sparks in the book of Job as sons of the flame. Device of kenning. So son of the valley of Hinnom. It's a device, a literary device, not child of hell, son of the valley of Hinnom. Local law. But this, going back to Matthew 5 now, the passage we began with for Gehenna, where the King James has Jesus saying, thou fool, in anybody who says thou fool will be liable to the hellfire. The King James fans and the hell fans are saying, here you are, here's Jesus teaching about hell and the divine judgment. Well, it's the opposite. Jesus is condemning it. The very thing that Jesus is condemning, these people are calling Jesus' own teaching and attributing it to his Father, that he tortured people in hell, when Jesus is condemning local law for chucking people on a garbage dump for calling somebody a fool. The irony of it, that people take this as Jesus' teaching. It's bad translating, bad teaching, and it's so shallow they don't read the whole verse, because the verse before says liable to the Sanhedrin. It's the Sanhedrin's law. What do you think? It's stunning, isn't it? And yet all these things have passed into tradition, and you contest the hell teaching, and out come all these hell people, and turn to Matthew 5:22. Turn to Matthew 23. There it is. Here's Jesus teaching on hell. When Jesus was condemning the local law of chucking people on the garbage dump for calling somebody a fool. How did they ever get away with it? How have they got away with it for so long? It's all to me like some mystery. Well, thank you for listening, and as I always say, God bless you richly, and I'll see you next time for part 3, when we'll deal with the third word in the New Testament that they like to translate as hell.